So 2013, most recent data shows that almost twice as many people died from suicide in Australia than transport-related deaths. But we hear so much about road accidents, and we see graphic images of cars colliding and people dying, but we see very little about how to alleviate the issue of suicidality in our community. The highest rate for males was those in age, it's actually 80 and over, or it says they're 85, so it's 38.3 per 100,000. So for every 100,000 of our population, 38 men took their lives, and the lowest rates were for males under 15. We'll see in the next graph. This is a graph from 2012, which is pretty much current. We see that 79 to 85 plus males are blue, women are the red colour. What are some of the things that you can see from that graph? Statistics are important when you're formulating programs and evaluating programs. And that's why the men's shed movement has been a lot of focus of research and a lot of focus of government funding in those areas because of those issues. The female rate seems to be reasonably constant. The male rate has a peak around 45, 49. What's happening for men around those ages? You know, there's a whole lot of trauma that might be happening in the family. There might be a divorce, there might be career changes, there might be redundancies, there's a whole range of things and whatever. And then there's a drop off to when, I guess when you retire, 65 to 69, then a sudden bit of a peak there at 70, 74. You know, that graph tells us a lot, and if you were working in a community and we're looking at some of that, as the information there, you'd be looking as to what are the reasons why there's peaks and troughs within that graph. So in Australia in 2013, there was 2,512 deaths. Men were 16.4 per 100,000, females 5.5. So 2,522 reported deaths in Australia. Population in Australia was 23.3 million. The rate was 19.9 per 100,000. Tip of the iceberg. Those deaths just represent very much a tip of the iceberg of suicides that have been deemed by the coroner as death by suicide. So unreported suicides add to that another 5 to 25%. I've calculated that as about 10%. So the realistic figure is that we had probably around 25,000 deaths, yet you'll hear in the media that there's only been 2.5 thousand deaths in our country due to suicide. But the realistic unreported suicide can take that figure right up to 25,000. What would give me some indication of a death by suicide that probably wouldn't be reported as a suicide?
Car accidents.
Car accidents, exactly. Car accidents.
Overdose of prescribed drugs.
Yep. Drugs, of prescriptions, overdose of drugs. Yeah, the coroner has to have credible information before he issues a certificate of death by suicide. In some rural towns, the doctors there often don't, if there's a known suicide, because the towns and the communities are so small, they'll actually say death by accident for the protection of the family, because there's so much stigma, or the stigma has been reduced to suicidality, but there's a lot of stigma in relation to suicide in our society. So car accidents, I heard many years ago, I think it was off one of the beaches here on the Sunshine Coast, where a lady had swum out to her oblivion, and the lifesavers that were trained on the coast here did what they were trained to do. They went out and the rubber ducky, they picked her up and they brought her back into town, and probably had some words with her, felt that she was okay, but she was quite intent in doing what she had set out to do. Within an hour or two of the lifesavers bringing her back, she had gone to the same beach to the headland and threw herself to her death there. Sad and tragic. But we need to understand that there's a lot of unreported. Attempted suicides. And these are probably people that you and I will come in a lot of contact with, people that have made a previous attempt. It's about 40 to 100 times that of the original figure of 2,522. So we can see that under the iceberg, the picture emerges that there are a lot of hurting people in our community that are not being, that are being tended to, but in some ways not being tended to. one of the main frustrations that I had here when working my role with Queensland Health was from the police. They would say that they would take people to the hospital and they'd stay there mandatory period of time and be assessed or whatever, and then they'd be let out. If the circumstances haven't changed, what do you think's going on for the individual? There needs to be a lot more support for people that in our community that are suffering issues of depression and suicidality, particularly when they're put in the institution. Our hospitals can't contain people, for months on a time. But we need to look at one of the things I've always been an advocate for is that we look at places. The Australian Institute of Suicide Prevention Research have started a hostel for suicidal individuals down in Brisbane, where there's trained and qualified psychologists and psychiatrists that will support people through their time of suicidality. Then people with thoughts of suicide, it's estimated that 1,000 people think of suicide every day. So suicide, whilst we look at the statistics, 2,522 reported deaths, if we look at the picture in a realistic term, then there are a whole lot of, that statistics becomes a whole lot larger. And that's in 1 year. And that's the latest statistics that we have. So look at that figure of 2,522, that equates to 35 people each week. 7 people every day and 1 death every 4 hours. And I think we start to sort of pull those statistics down. I think we start to realise, if we look at a figure of 2,500 deaths over a year, 1 death every 4 hours in our community by suicide, then we need to realise that we have, I guess, a lot of work to support individuals.